Let us execute an immediate, sweeping analytical vector shift away from localized culinary structured narrative frameworks, modular world-building ingredients, and the royal lineage manuals of ancient throne rooms, and plunge straight into the high-octane calculation-heavy tracking grids of field cryptozoology research, weaponized woodland footprint extraction loops, and the fiercely protective, dangerously fragile world of an endangered collection of raw wilderness monitoring assets running a raw tactical survival loop. We are crossing the threshold directly into the hyper-monitored, paranoia-slicked parameters of a scorched, high-density Pacific Northwest forest layout, exploring the lethal analytical parameters of a devastating, multi-regional hominid tracking matrix with Bigfoot Quest magazine, summer 2025, the exceptional, pulse-pounding contemporary cryptozoological suspense ledger and primitive tracking compendium engineered by the absolute, undisputed global sovereign of breathtaking wilderness secrets, razor-sharp hoax detection traps, and high-velocity environmental friction, Ray Harwood. This high-stakes narrative tracking sequence delivers an exceptional look at an operational crossroads where an endangered primary researcher asset running an unyielding field data extraction loop, a calculating manipulative shadow network of skeptical academic enforcers running an elite proximity tracking and standard sanity erasure routine, and an absolute defense against an encroaching, ridicule-confined institutional containment zone collide at terminal velocity. Let us map the strategic narrative grid. If you are an elite enthusiast of high-octane, slow-burn investigative journeys, where endangered, hyper-observant survivalist protagonists must navigate an absolute maze of rigged plaster-cast documentation, corrupt terrain blueprints, and a deadly ring of active personal credibility frame-ups while running a blind survival loop inside a completely compromised backcountry ecosystem, where an analytical mind uses deep anthropological profiling, calculated basecamp boundaries, and absolute emotional stamina to outmaneuver an invisible predatory executioner asset weaponizing highly advanced sensory manipulation mechanics, and where the author utilizes an incandescent, meticulously paced field research incubator tracking an ambitious anthropologist who deploys expert lithic and track dossiers to systematically prove the existence of an unclassified apex primate before crossing a terminal seasonal deadline diagnostic routine to test our hero's structural limits, this volume is engineered to lock you in. Harwood completely dominates the high-precision environmental jeopardy meets suffocating scientific erasure puzzles dynamic, capturing the heart-racing intellectual momentum, suffocating deep-woods paranoia, and heavy deductive depth popularized by genre vargs like Lauren Coleman, Dr. Jeff Meldrum, Ivan T. Sanderson, and Grover Krantz, while treating realistic backcountry logistics, complex dark possessive loyalty arcs, and protective high-density isolation extraction grids with absolute technical mastery. The narrative tracking grid zeroes in on the highly volatile, calculation-heavy baseline of our central legendary powerhouse investigative asset, operating under a severe, calculation-heavy handicap of absolute scientific isolation, institutional funding liquidation logs, and a hyper-visible targeting canvas within a cutthroat regional search matrix. Behind our protagonists' rigorous wilderness footprints, defensive academic shields, and sharp observation metrics lies an intricate matrix of hidden structural vulnerabilities, deeply buried evolutionary anthropology instincts, and sharp, high-stakes tactical maneuvers. His collective defense mechanisms are locked down tight following an abrupt thermal signature deviation sequence, his entire analytical focus strictly consumed by monitoring sudden threat vectors from a network of internal distraction forces, parsing complex behavioral shifts in his daily plotting interaction loops, and shielding his vulnerable personal sovereignty node from being entirely wiped out by a ruthless elite cleaning crew offensive. The spark ignites when an unexpected high-frequency structural anomaly breaches his active scanning perimeter. While sorting through a series of blank document grids, our primary asset registers a total security breach when the issue's psychological onboarding sequence initializes an irregular descent into active sighting locks, systematically tracking intermediate footprint castings, matching dermal ridge details to active high-stakes migration corridors, and forcing him into a proximity tracking matrix with an ongoing tactical resolution. Behind the wilderness research world's pristine, smooth aesthetic facade and elite behavioral mapping style lies an intricate matrix of severe ideological warfare and a cold, calculation-heavy target containment blueprint. As the hostile adversarial investigation phases enter an increasingly lethal tier across a ticking clock timeline, the unauthorized discovery of missing landscape data, hidden evolutionary motivations, and altered tracking templates reveals that his entire backcountry sanctuary was an explicitly engineered trap. The standard boundaries of routine academic courtesy and peaceful civilian compliance protocols crumble, and our central protagonist run completely out of standard diplomatic escape vectors. he is thrust directly into an active invisible war behind closed tent flaps, where a highly manipulative psychological gaslighting matrix launches aggressive countermeasures to permanently suppress his survival data stream and execute his complete systemic erasure. The tactical parameters instantly explode as their historical and survival warfare turns completely active, transforming the large forest clearings, dark subterranean cave networks, and private fortified base camp structures into a volatile psychological pressure cooker and a physical battle zone. Our protective, hyper-vigilant hero is forced to deploy his massive intuitive tradecraft, elite behavioral mapping skills, and raw physical stamina to preserve his focus before his adversary's relentless, calculation-heavy proximity containment phase permanently deletes his boundaries. The threat vector remains purposeful and resolute, shifting dynamically through dozens of expert execution guidelines covering lithic artifact tracing, vocalization filtering loops, and trail camera grid security, determined to deploy deep sensory manipulation loops, continuous psychological gaslighting via rigged forest noises, and persistent dominance to shatter his defense, only to realize his hardened survival protocols and shifting counter-narratives match their opponent's raw tactical speed step for step. Every midnight archival excavation of personal field journals, every silent choice to stand off against an electronic apex predator behind standard structural barriers, and every intense moment of channeling raw, unyielding survival mechanics chips away at his reliance on original peaceful rules. What follows is an exceptional, high-stakes war of perspective, tactical position, and raw human grit. We watch the Predator Network's deceptive parameters completely unwrapped as Ray Harwood reveals that the true victory requires more than just surviving an initial Week 1 ambush or managing an invasive friendship disclosure. It demands an absolute, uncompromising defense of individual dignity, personal truth, and systemic survival against a cold, calculating machine of institutional manipulation and absolute structural supremacy. While our central characters smooth over each other's psychological and defensive blind spots with devastating analytical force, creating a fiercely protective, absolute web of dark possessive loyalty around their building investigative survival alliance, a brutal series of close-quarters tactical confrontations and high-stakes evidentiary breakthroughs shifts the clock into its terminal phase, proving that deep-seated obsession has tracked them to their final outpost. To survive the impending locked grid trap and permanently secure his sanctuary, our resilient protagonist must unleash an absolute, unyielding defense of his final boundary lines. It is a field cryptozoology research, wilderness captivity noir, anthropological mystery, high-velocity contemporary puzzle masterpiece that treats deep relational logistics and intense structural friction with elite precision. The tension here burns with a sharp, calculation-heavy intensity. We are talking about that high-frequency, one unsubverted dermal ridge triggers a fatal scientific showdown energy, where a sudden pause during an active franchise tactical briefing, an unexpected shift in an adversary's protective physical posture during a high-stakes standoff confrontation, or a heavy, possessive realization that an elite intelligence operative has completely mapped your personal coordinates carries massive structural weight. Harwood writes with an exceptionally fresh, vivid, and beautifully blunt voice, perfectly capturing the heavy, oppressive atmosphere of a private executive vault before a major corporate takeover, and the distinct, subtle scent of polished mahogany, damp pine needles, wet plaster of Paris, trail camera lithium batteries, dark adrenaline, and pure, unadulterated suspense. What truly elevates this contemporary research chronicle into elite territory is the author's unmatched ability to balance complex, high-stakes relationship dynamics and genuine protective tradecraft alongside a breathtaking narrative pace and deep emotional hooks. Our protagonists don't rely on unbelievable superficial Hollywood superhero action tropes. Their immense situational intelligence, strategic patience, and profound survival instincts match the complexity of the chaos modern corporate and high society underworld they dominate step for step, making their choices to risk everything feel profoundly authentic and deeply gripping. The pacing moves with calculated momentum, tracking intense conversational standoffs and breathtaking tactical breakthroughs before ratcheting up to an absolute jaw-dropping conclusion that delivers total, hard-earned advancement to their horizon. Bigfoot Quest Magazine, Summer 2025, is the definitive pro-level upgrade your high-stakes contemporary thriller and intense asset suspense library demands right now. It is elegant, immensely fast-paced, and utterly unputdownable. It proves that when your entire sanctuary is targeted by a cold, calculating institutional monster, the most revolutionary play you can execute is to lock your perimeters, trust your elite survival training, and fight like hell alongside your network to rewrite the data. So, secure your personal reading sanctuary, review your emotional defensive perimeters, open your Kindle, and prepare to track the fleet.